Hello, my gorgeous human beings. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. And remember to breathe and relax. I understand that things may or may not be working out for you. Regardless, listen good vibes to one another, and let's remind ourselves that all of us are doing everything in our power to get through this game called life. In this episode, I had the opportunity to talk to Rebeca Eigen from shadowdance.com. You guys, you will hear this episode where she breaks down my star chart and she nails everything about me, which I thought was fascinating. It's really interesting when you see where you messed up on certain things, and especially like with me, where I talk about my frustrations, I talk about my irritations and things that get to me, and she understands me at the fact that Rebeca and I are pretty similar in many ways. So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit information about her. Rebeca Eigen, she is an astrologer for 25 plus years. She specializes in relationships, from everyday decisions to critical life-altering moments. Rebeca shares with you her practical wisdom and guidance for your life's journey in becoming who you are meant to be. She uses Jungian psychology. She guides you to see the potential that hides in your hidden self, using basically your shadow. And in this episode, we got into detail about what the shadow is. So sign up for her shadow dance webinar and have a private consultation. And remember, when you go to her website, which is shadowdance.com, again, that is shadowdance.com. And like I said, I'm going to link the information down below. Make sure to tell her that I sent you to receive a consultation. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. And remember, as always, guys, stay far out. Bye. Welcome back to the Far Out Wisdom podcast, and I hope that everybody's having a wonderful day. I just woke up not too long ago. I'm having my cup of joe, and I'm with Rebeca from Shadow Dance, and we're going to be having a lot of we're going to dive deep into astrology, and that's what she does. And Rebeca, welcome to the Foul Universe, and if you could introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and you don't have to get into like details or anything like that.
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Rebeca Eigen, and I live in Houston. And I've been doing astrology and studying Jung for 30 years or more. I work with the seventh house. So my goal with my work is to help people own their shadow in order to have a better relationship. Because when we can know what planets and signs are ruling our seventh house and work with the energy and understand the shadow concept fully, then we can have a great relationship with really anyone.
Right. So on this on your website, you posted a very awesome quote by Carl Jung. So I'm going to read it. It says, "I should like to emphasize that the integration of the shadow, or the realization of the personal unconscious, marks the first stage in the analytic process, and that without it, a recognition of the anima and the animus is impossible. The shadow can be realized only through a relation to a partner, and the anima and animus only through a partner of the opposite sex, because only in such relation do their projection becomes operative." So could you break down what Carl Jung what he means by the shadow, if you can kind of to explain to the audience what it is?
Yes. Well, there's the shadow is everything about us that is unconscious, denied, repressed. It's completely unconscious. Therefore, we don't know about it. It's not our negative qualities. It's not like, oh, I'm rude sometimes. Well, we know that. That's not shadow. Shadow is completely unconscious. Therefore, we deny it. We are not like that. You are. Or we will get married to somebody and we will say, my husband has a horrible temper, and totally deny that we have a temper. But if you're around that person for a little while, you see that they're just as angry all the time. And so they're projecting it. So projection is how we do this. We project parts of ourselves that are unknown onto other people.
Right. And that's my problem. It's that
all our problem.
I know majority of us has problem. We're not perfect. And to act like we are perfect, it's going to make everything worse around us. So with my issue is that that a lot of, I talked about this with Isaac, is that a lot of my anger comes out. And of course, I know the audience are kind of tired of me talking about, but it's my way of opening myself to the world, because I have I'm looking at my issues right now. Like, I have issues with communication. I have issues with my anger. I get annoyed easily. I get irritated easily. But at the same time, I feel like I'm not assertive enough. And I think I come across as somebody who's like a douchebag. And so like, I can't, I think I was recommended to integrate my shadow. Is it your shadow like your bad side to yourself? Or is it just like your, something within yourself like unconsciously wants to come out? And if that's the case, it's that with me.
Okay, so maybe the shadow side of your anger is your weakness.
Right.
Your gullibility, your sensitivity to others instead of your anger or your aggressiveness or your assertiveness. And forgive me, but I have your chart open. Do you mind?
Yeah.
If I say something?
Go for it. Yeah.
Because when you started with anger, I went, okay, I'll open the chart.
Yeah.
Mars, which is the function in all women and men, is our ability to assert ourselves. It's how we go after what we want. It is how we take action, and it's how we get angry. It is how we have boundaries, how we say, no, that's not right. You can't do that to me. Mm-hmm. And then it's exactly 180 degrees opposite your moon. And it's your Mars is in Aries, which is the strongest Mars that you can possibly have for a woman. Mm-hmm. And Aries rules Mars. So it is a very strong Mars. And then the moon is in Libra. Libra is very accommodating, acquiescing, wants to be fair. Libra wants companionship, wants partnership, wants to do things together. And Mars wants to be independent, wants to be autonomous, wants to go their own way. So you are constantly on a seesaw or a teeter-totter between the part of you that seeks autonomy and independence and the part of you that wants togetherness and connection. And the part of you that wants connection and the part of you that, wants to be alone and wants to do their own thing and doesn't want anybody telling you what to do, needs to dance with the part of you that really does want connection, that wants partnership, that likes having people around, and that really is a very accommodating and fair person. For me, if I were to be with you, I would say, Boone, are you being fair? And immediately your anger would dissipate.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I feel like in my life, I don't know if Rebecca knows who Deadpool is. He's a character that is a Marvel character for the comic books. And he always... I always compare myself to this particular character because he wants to do the right thing, but he always messes up in the process. And that's the same with me. Like I'm constantly dancing with both sides. Like I want to be fair, but I want to be assertive. I want to pretty much express my emotion, but I always come up very aggressive in the process. And this is where a lot of people accuse me of being mean and very direct and honest. And that's my issue that I have been having since forever. And I never really understand that until you pretty much broke it down with my chart. And if you guys want to your chart to be read, I'm going to link her information down below. You pretty much just send your email, your birth date, when you were born, and she will, put your chart for you. So pretty much what you explained is how I personally feel. Like I like at the same time I'm feminine, but at the same time I'm very masculine. So it's like the yin and yang within me is just like constantly is at war, if that makes sense. And I never really understood it or what's going on within myself. My sister always recommended that to meditate if you get angry, and then if you want to play fair. Like I feel bad too, like really easily. Does that make sense? I think it's like my Libra side. Well, I feel bad if I say something very mean or I'm very aggressive, and I'm like I feel bad, but at the same time I'm like screw it.
You have a very soft Venus as well. Your Venus is in Cancer, which is a very mothering influence.
Yeah.
So Venus, wants home and family and connection and sensitivity to others. And you're very compassionate. You're extremely compassionate, but you're very analytical and critical.
Yeah. That's what I don't like about myself. And this is where I have an issue.
That's not shadow. Yeah. That is absolutely not shadow. Shadow is like opposites. So whatever you identify with very strongly, the exact opposite is going to be in your unconscious building up to the same degree. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is bring the unconscious to consciousness so that we can balance. And in a relationship, the way I did it with my partner, because I have a Moon-Mars conjunction, and my previous business partner had a square between her Moon and Mars. So we knew, because we were both studying astrology at the time, we knew that we had an issue with authority. Who's going to be the boss? So what I sat her down and I said, you're holding back and you're not expressing your anger, but you're doing it covertly all over the place, which makes me even more angry.
Right.
So she was being passive aggressive, and I started studying what that meant. I did it on my YouTube channel. There's a video on passive aggressive behavior. Right. But what we ended up doing was this. Sometimes we're going to do it your way. And sometimes we're going to do it my way, and we're going to compromise, and we're going to take turns, and we're going to do it consciously. That means that sometimes I have to allow for you to take over and for your input to be more important than my input, because we were business partners. And so we had to learn to negotiate and compromise. And you know what? In a year, all of the friction was gone. It took us a year. But the year we spent really looking at each other and really going, astrology really helps. Yeah. We really, really it helped us to identify all the different characters inside us, because nobody is just one way.
Right.
We all have all these different people inside us. We're like a traveling roadshow of people. And you might be one way with one person and then be with another person and another part of you comes out.
Yeah, it's like a circus within us. We have to accept that. So, Rebecca, what got you into astrology? I mean, you've been doing this for 30 years. So I'm 32.
Well, I'm 68.
I'm a baby in comparison to you. But you look good, by the way, for 68. I'm not going to lie about that.
I have a lot of Libras, and I have Leo rising, so I'm very conscious of my looks. And I take care of my body. I mean, I go walking and I make sure I eat healthy, etc. Because I'm very self-conscious about my body, and I also want to be healthy in my old age. And so, of all my family, I have never had any illnesses. Knock on wood, ever. And all of my siblings have. And it's because they go from being overweight to not, whatever. Anyway, that's not the question. The question is, how did I get into astrology? John Gray says women talk in semicolons, and we do. Because one thought goes to another thought, to another thought. But the original question, when I was 30, I fell madly in love with a printer, and I'm a graphic artist. Right. And he walked in the door, and it was love at first sight. I mean, it was like, it became an obsession with me, and I was married, and I had only been married 2 years. And I wanted to work with him. So I made sure that he got the job that we were doing. And then we started working together, and he was married, and he asked me to work with his wife. And I did. I trained her because she was a budding graphic artist. And so I spent time training her just so I could be his friend, just so I could be around him. And anyway, they broke up and we started having an affair, but we weren't having sex. We were having a mental affair because he was Aquarius, and I have Aquarius on the marriage house cusp, as do you. Mm-hmm. And so Aquarius requires a mental communication and stimulation. You cannot be partners with somebody who won't talk to you.
Right.
It's impossible. And so because he would talk to me, and my husband was so introverted, he was like the total opposite. Mm. I left him for this guy, and he broke up with me right after that and went back to his wife. And it was devastating. It was devastating to me. But what was really interesting is I went back to my husband, and I was there for another year, but in a separate room until I could get enough money to get my own place, because the girl I had moved in with smoked and I can't stand cigarettes. So I lived in my spare bedroom for a year, and then the guy started coming back around. He started coming back and bringing me work to my house, and I had gotten pregnant and had a baby. So now my child was an infant, and this guy kept coming around, wanting to be near me. And it started all over again. So I left my husband, and he did it again. He dumped me again. Now I've left my husband, and I have a 1-year-old. So can you imagine how I felt? So one day somebody said, "Have you ever had an astrology reading?" And I said, "No, but I've always been very curious about astrology because I am a Libra, and Libras rule art and psychology, and I am an artist, and I'm very interested in psychology, and I'm always bringing people and ideas together." That's the whole purpose of being Libra, is like bringing people together with ideas and socialization. So anyway, I go see this man, and he was in his late 60s, maybe early 70s at the time. He had built the Unity Pyramid here in Houston for Unity Church of Christianity. And he told me that I was involved in a very complicated love affair where there were no easy answers. And I was trying to save this person who was being abused by his partner, and I thought I could save him. My mouth fell open. Right. How on earth could he know that? And he detailed different parts of my personality in my chart that were not Libra. That I didn't, I knew, but I didn't know how to put my name on it. I mean, I didn't know. He validated who I was. And so I left there that day, and I determined I'm going to learn how to do this.
Right.
And I've always been a journal writer, and I kept journals, and I still have that cassette. I turned it into an MP3, and the exact dates and times that this guy would come back into my life, the planet Pluto, which rules obsessions and compulsiveness, etc., was going back and forth over my Venus. Mm-hmm. So I went back to him again, and I'm like, are we fated? Do we have free will? What is this? And he said, our character is fated. We are who we are. We are part of the entire cosmos. Astrology comes from alchemy, which had the worldview that the entire cosmos was connected and that it's one unified organism. It's not separate. We are not separate from the plants or the animals or the trees. I mean, have you ever had an experience where you are walking and you see a turtle and you know in your mind that you need to slow down, that something is going on with you, and you see a turtle? These things happen to me all the time now because I'm very into symbolism and synchronicities. So when you start to live and have this worldview, or help your worldview along to where you recognize we are part of the universe. Who we are is that moment in time. That's who we came. That's who we came here to be, and we're all unique. We are all different. So accepting our humanity, accepting our flaws, etc., is a lifelong process, because the reason the shadow is built, or the reason the shadow has come into our consciousness and takes over us, it's because we were denied these parts of us, that we were denigrated when we were young. And we may, for you, for instance, your Mars being in Aries, being very strong, you always thought of yourself as a strong woman. You're a Leo. It's a masculine sign.
Mm-hmm.
Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius, Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini, we're the masculine-oriented signs.
Mm-hmm.
The water signs and the earth signs are the feminine signs. But when I talk about masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about gender.
Mm-hmm.
Gender is male and female.
Right.
Principles in the psyche are masculine and feminine. So when you come in, as you did, with a very strong Mars and a Sun in Leo in the first house and Leo rising, you're very dominating.
Right.
You can't help it.
Yeah,
that's who you are, and you have to love that about you. We have to learn to love every part of us.
So, like, how do I control? Like the thing that a lot of people tell me is that it's control. Being dominant is controlling, and that's a very negative adjective to describe a personality trait. Being controlling. I've always been I like at the same time, every time like I'm in a very dominant position, I have been a supervisor many times, but when I see injustice, and I know that word,
That's
it rings. Yeah. When I see injustice, I don't like it. But at the same time, my dominant behavior is like, I have to make the decision. I have to lay off workers. I have to do this, even though I know that is going to destroy lives. Right. And I think that you said it's my Cancer side, it's my compassionate side. So like I'm stuck in between that war, that civil war within myself. And I never really get it. I never really understand it. I don't know what to do. So I cope by, concealing myself, my aspect of myself, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to admit that I like to be dominant. I don't like to admit that I like to be assertive and aggressive. And so that lead me to, choose, careers and stuff that I like to be by myself, because I like to be by myself majority of the time. I'm an introvert, but at the same time I'm an extrovert, because every time like I make my appearance, I have a very powerful, personality. And so a lot of people can't handle it. But I never really get it. I don't, it's like, I'm a nice person.
You'll soften as you get older, and you will soften when you understand some of the different parts of yourself that contribute to your self-denigration. Your Mercury is in Virgo. You're very analytical. You're very detail-oriented. You're very perfectionist-oriented. And part of your path is what we call the North Node. And the North Node is in Pisces. And Pisces is about accepting a little bit of chaos around you. Mm-hmm. It's about going with the flow. It's about not being in control of everything. And the more you embrace your North Node, the softer you'll become. And then the feminine aspects of you, which are there. They are mm-hmm. there. I mean, if I sat and did a whole consultation with you, you would see all the different parts and where they actually live in your life, in your psyche. But that has nothing to do with shadow, but that has to do with self-awareness and mm-hmm. self-knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I think self-knowledge is everything, because then you can bring that part of you out more consciously because you know about it. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. let's go back to the opposites of anger. And right. What is the opposite? The opposite would be feeling helpless, feeling weak, feeling depotentiated. That's the opposite. So feeling that you have to assert and you have to use a sword is the fear that if I don't use the sword, they will not respect me. They will mm-hmm. not listen to me. I will not get my way. And the opposite is going to be in your shadow. So you're going to draw people over and over and over that you are repulsed by, that mm-hmm. are the opposite of you. That's shadow.
So our shadow is the opposite
of what ourselves. We identify with.
Very interesting. So to move forward, You did wrote Our Gold. Guys, I'm talking to the audience. I'm reading from her website, which, like I said, I will link down below. So she has it's called Our Gold. It says we all have both masculine and feminine sides, yin and yang, anima and animus, king and queen, sun and moon. Recognizing our total self as we integrate our shadow is a lifelong retrieval process, but your astrology can show you how. The alchemists called this our prima materia, and it was also our gold. It's about balancing the opposites within us, knowing that we're all like this and we also like this and we need that part. So can you define what is your total self? And of course, you talk about the shadow. And then what is the prime materia? What does that mean?
Prima materia is what the alchemists called the shadow. Mm-hmm. It is the dung heap. It is the base part of us. It's the parts we're ashamed of, the parts that we deny that we would ever be like that. We would never be like that. We see those things in other people and we would be completely repulsed by. We actually need those parts. Mm-hmm. Because when we look at the shadow, the base parts of us from a different perspective, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example that happened in my own marriage. My husband was extremely cheap.
Right.
I mean, that was what I considered it to be, cheap. And I was the exact opposite. And the more cheap he got, the more extravagant I got. And if I wanted a purse, I might as well buy 3 and a dress, because I was going to get in trouble anyway. So we had this revolving circle around these opposites. And when I left him, guess what I had to do? I had to grow up. I had to save money. I had to buy a house. I had to buy a car. I had to do everything he was doing for both of us, but I could only denigrate it in him. Therefore, I couldn't access it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I had to do it that I could recognize and then appreciate what he actually brought to the table. Mm-hmm. And so most people get married to their opposites. They marry somebody who's the opposite, and then they try to get that person to change. Well, both people need to change. And mm-hmm. my work with couples and with individuals, because you don't have to be married to do this work. You can do it. You have to do it, whether you're with friends or bosses or coworkers or children even. That when you start to see your opposites and integrate your opposites, that is the self. That is the self-organizing principle in the psyche. The self wants us to unite all of these parts of us that have been repressed or rejected from consciousness. Mm-hmm. And that's why he says it's a lifelong retrieval process. This isn't something anyone does overnight. I've been doing it 30 years, and I even saw another shadow piece a couple weeks ago.
The missing puzzle.
Wow, but the way the psyche will help you is things will repeat. They repeat. And so now when something repeats, I go, oh, what does the universe want from me now? What does this mean? Instead of, I'm a victim, they did this to me, look what they said about me. I don't think like that anymore.
Right.
But you see how it softens me? It softens you because you recognize that you are not alone in the psyche. The self is with you all the time. And you can call that the force, the self, the universe, God, whatever. You can call it whatever you want, but we're not alone. We have this inside of us. It is our totality and our essence. And the shadow is also part of the self. The shadow, we can't reject our shadow. We have to embrace our shadow. And then the anima and animus are the male and female contrasexual images in the psyche. And every man has a woman inside of him, and every woman has a man inside of her. And those are the people that we're going to be attracted to like a bug to the light.
Yeah.
And those people are mirroring to us a part of us we don't know yet. Mm-hmm. See, the whole lifetime is about being mirrored and finding those parts and bringing them back. And the more you bring them back, then you can live your life appropriately. When you need to be your masculine side, you will do it. And you will do it with a strong voice. But you don't have to cut people's heads off.
I would like put people in jail, like off with your head. And that's my personality that I feel. So I don't want to. A lot of people are like, oh, we just knew you were a Leo just by your personality. But being a Leo, I'm like you said, I'm mixed a little bit of a Libra. But
that's why I said we're a lot alike. I have Leo rising. I have 5 planets in Libra. My Leo is in the first house, like you. I have Aquarius ruling the 7th. So Uranus, the planet Uranus, rules our marriage house. It's an aspect to Neptune, which is you do too. It's an aspect to Uranus, which you do too. Almost like there were so many things, but I had a very strong Mars. Mars aspects everything in my chart, and I felt exactly like you.
Yeah.
When I was young. When I was young, I felt the same way. I'd leave people bleeding.
You're like, I'm the same. Wait,
with
my
words,
mom.
with words. I mean, I could leave people bleeding, and then my Libra would cringe. Like, what did you do?
And that's
What
exactly.
did you say? Why are you like that? And then I beat myself up. But you know what? You have to learn to love that part of you. But you'll never love all of you until you love your shadow.
Right.
I have a webinar right now, and it's got 6 modules. And right now, the reason I created the webinar is when I'm doing a consultation with somebody, it is almost impossible to give them as much information as I can in a consultation. And I charge $250 because I spend an hour with researching that person and then an hour with them.
Right.
And I give them that, and I give them a little bit of all of this. And it's one of my clients said, "Oh my God, that was just overwhelming." And she said, break it down into 7 consultations. Well, not everybody can afford that.
Right.
Some people can, and they can pay me for the 7 consultations, but some people can't. And so I created the webinar so more people could have access to me and what I've learned about relationships and the masculine and feminine and the psyche and our mother and father complexes. And so the webinar has like 6 modules, and you go through, what is the shadow? How did this happen to me? Why did I learn about the shadow? Where do we see our shadow? All the different ways we can see our shadow, because there's lots of ways. And then the third part of it is our mother and father complexes and our anima and animus. And then the 4th module is falling in love. What is that about? What does it mean for both people? The anima and the animus are very involved with this, and the shadow, and the 7th house in astrology. And then the 5th module is, okay, what planets and signs are in your 7th house? Those you're going to have to learn to share in an equal way with another person, because it's your energy, and like attracts like. You cannot attract anybody who isn't your same energy, even if these are unconscious parts of you that you don't know about yet.
Right.
And then the 6th module is what Jung called ego development and individuation, coming to love and know our whole self, and knowing that who we are is okay, and all the parts of us, the self, is trying to get us to love ourselves.
Yeah.
All the parts.
We're constantly doing it.
It's really beautiful. So that whole thing is 6 modules. It's a one-time fee. You can do it this year. You can do it again next year. You can do it if you meet another guy and you want to do it again and you want to go through it with him. It's $50 right now for the entire month of December for all 6 modules. And after that, it'll be $99 a person. And I felt like if I did it like that, then people don't have to come have a $250 reading with me. They can do the work. And then at the very end, if they want one consultation, or they want to understand some of the things that they learned in that's different than me having to spend 7 hours with them.
Right.
So, and
that's a good deal, guys. That's a really good deal. And like I said, I will link all her information down below so you guys can learn about yourself. So you don't have to go on Tinder and, swipe left or right. you could just have your astrology, your chart, and just follow that. And like a lot of people come to you for a relationship. Relationship is a very complicated.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. And coming from a person myself, I finally found somebody that was, Jeremy is the total opposite of me. Very calm, very peaceful. He doesn't, the reason why we have been together for quite some time is because we know each other for like 12 years before we even started dating. We know we're the same age. And he is a Taurus. So he's very calm, collective. He's very calm, collective. He doesn't, he likes to be he likes his own space, just like me. I like my own space a lot. I like my own little domain, my own little kingdom. And we're moving to Nevada, and he was like, I'm just going to build you this little tiny studio where you could just do whatever you want to do. I'm just going to leave you alone. So he understands that boundary of myself. And so when we're talking about relationship, you can go to Rebecca for that as well. She talks about the shadow dance in relationship with each other. And like she said, it's like a dance between not only relationship, but yourself as well. So,
but do you see why you were drawn to him? He's all of the parts of you that you have yet to become. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. He probably needs to learn to stand up for himself in a certain place.
Yeah. He acts like he does, but he doesn't. he takes a lot of crap from people. It's not that he's getting bullied. Of course, when there's, when people step over the line, he's just going to raise his hand and say, that's enough. But majority of the time, he just let things go. He just go with the flow.
And that's very Piscean, which is your North Node. So it's something that you're needing to develop. And I guarantee you, if I looked at his chart, he's having to develop some of what you are.
Yes.
And that's why people get together, because they're complementary opposites. But in time, you will see, you will become more like him and he will become more like you if all goes well.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
And it's just that's how I talked about it when we were scheduling this this podcast episode. I had deja vu. I was in my brother-in-law's little trailer. We were just having dinner, and Rebecca called me, and we were just talking on the phone for a little bit, and I just had deja vu. I was like, am I meant to talk to Rebecca? Because I had this question in my head not too long ago, and it made me think, why am I like this? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? I feel like everybody's pulling me everywhere. People want my attention. People want to be my friend. People want to, they enjoy my chaos, if that makes sense. People enjoy my company, but at the same time, I do have issues making long time friendship. But when I do, it's for life, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And learning about this, when you told me about my chart, of course, I couldn't read it. I'm going to link my personal chart, guys, in the blog down below, and you guys can see what I'm trying to say. I'm looking at the chart, and I'm like, I really don't understand this at all. And then I sent it to my sister. So, Rebecca, if you don't know this, my sister is also Libra, and she has Leo rising. Not Leo rising. I think her moon is a Leo. I'm not really sure. I forgot. But she's like the same as, like, we're like identical as well.
The interesting thing too is that our parents are in us, and that's one of the parts of the modules about our mother and father. When you look at the chart of the family, I wrote a book about this, and I talk about how in my family there are 6 children, but every one of us has Leo and Scorpio. Every one of us, because my mother was a Scorpio, a double Scorpio, and my father was a Leo. And he was very, very dominant. And she was the opposite, but she had Jupiter and Neptune in Leo in the marriage house. So he was being all those parts of her she refused to be, because she wanted to be the one that was thought highly of, and he was awful. Right. Well, guess what? As soon as he died, she became her Leo self. It was fabulous. It was fabulous to see her want to be the center of attention and do the things that he would do that he overdid, because he was doing it for both of them. So when you know your energy, you can share it instead of one person's in one extreme and the other person's the other extreme.
Right.
It's really cool.
It really is. And the whole aspect of this thing, a lot of people are what do you say to the critics who disregard astrology and say, oh, it's just, not science, it's not backed? What do you say to those critics?
I really don't try to convince anybody about astrology. They either intuitively see that it is important and that it's psychology, or they don't. Carl Jung, who is the most famous psychiatrist, he used it. It's in every book that he wrote, and yet they did not forever accept the astrology at the Jung Center here in Houston, except for that when I wrote my book, the librarian, she put it out on display. She literally put it out on display, and it's called The Shadow Dance and the Astrological Seventh House. And I asked her why, and she said, because your book is a good introduction to Jung, and Jung talks about astrology throughout his work. And so it's becoming more and more and more accepted in psychological circles. But unless people study it, they can't, they will not know that it's real. Some people are absolutely not open to it. Isaac wasn't. He was not open to it at all.
Yeah.
And that's okay. He's gone off into other tangents, and he's very into all these different other things. And that's good. You can come back to it later, or never. I don't care. I just know that it is a wonderful tool for self-knowledge. Right. It's just one tool, but it is a tool for self-knowledge like no other, because it is like looking at the blueprint of your psyche. It is. And
most definitely.
When people understand alchemy, and I think the next webinar that I'm going to create, because I'm going to start working on a new one, is going to be on alchemy. And that'll be another webinar about how the alchemists knew about this worldview that we were all connected, that we were connected to the cosmos. They had to go underground because of the Catholic Inquisition. So the numerologists and the palmists and the astrologers and the people who are doing all of these other ways of looking at yourself, they were closer to the earth. They were more involved with that the animals and the plants and the trees and the earth is important. It was animistic. It was the worldview was that we were all part of each other and everything was connected. Right now, our worldview is very patriarchal, and we're needing to bring the feminine in. The feminine is what will help balance us, and it's not about gender. A man can have a feminine inside of him. A woman has a masculine inside of her. We need to balance our feminine and our masculine. And that feminine energy has to come in to help us get into balance.
Right.
With this patriarchal world that we are in, especially the United States. I mean, God, it's not the same in other countries. Talk to people in other countries, France, the Norwegians, the Australians. I mean, I just had a conversation with a guy I met on Isaac's podcast, and he was from another country as well. I'm trying to think of the country. All of a sudden, it slipped my mind. This is the kind of thing that happens to you when you get 68.
And it's also the thing that happened to you when you have a baby too. There's a thing called mommy brain. We have mommy brain, and that's what happens. Like, we're in the middle of a conversation, you're like, okay, why I'm in this room again? And it happens, but I totally understand. I think is he from the UK?
No, his name is Goncalo Carstana, and
yes, I know who you're talking about. I've got where he's from.
Where's he? He's from.
I think he's from South America.
America, but which? Gosh, why can't I remember? That's crazy.
Somewhere around there.
I have this chart. Hold on, I have this chart. Goncalo, let's see.
It's so fascinating, guys. You guys totally should have your reading done, even though you don't believe it, even though you guys think it's silly. uh, it's really interesting, and she nails it. My personality trait, where I'm just circling around circles, just like, I don't know if I should be very direct or should I just be nice, or but
You're going to have to integrate both sides in a flow. You're going to have
exactly.
to eventually see that you need all of you, and you need all of yourself. And when you start to recognize all the different parts, then you'll be more appropriate with it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's appropriate to take a stand.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's appropriate to have stop signs and roadblocks and say no. We need rules. We need our strength, but we also need our feminine energy. We need to be receptive and receive, learn to receive as well as to give.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll change over time. And I love being older because I remember just being so lost when I went and had my first consultation, and he knew so much about me, and it's taken years. I'm not kidding. Years and years and years and years of working on myself and continuing to study psychology and astrology and Jungian psychology. And I study a lot of books on relationships. A lot of different authors have written great books on relationships. Harville Hendrix wrote one, Keeping the Love You Want, keeping the love you find, or getting the love you want. And he uses the word imago. I guess it's a easier word to use, but it's exactly the same thing as shadow.
Right.
He just uses a different word,
Yeah.
Same exact thing. But I use shadow because I really respect Carl Jung.
Mm-hmm.
I just do. I'll never forget when I first started reading Jung, and I was living in my other house. I was in my early 40s, and I was reading Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, which is his autobiography. And he talks about how there are people inside us we don't know. And I had just had an experience, and I went, who inside me said that? That's not what I meant to say. Why did I say that? And when I read his book and he explained that, I was like, wow. So I want to know how to find these unconscious parts of me that are called complexes. I would like to bring these forth, and the shadow is a complex. Our mother and father are complexes in us. We all have all these different complexes. And so bringing forth the shadow and bringing forth what's unconscious slowly but surely brings you to your center.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It brings you to your center.
And then going back to your website, and you wrote, our shadow is directly behind the persona. So it's the first step into our unconscious. And so the definition of persona that I got from I think it's Merriam-Webster, the aspect of someone's character that is presented to or perceived by others in psychology often contrasts with anima. So I've heard about the persona. I never really did my research about it, and I wanted to help me and the audience to understand it, to help me understand it. What exactly?
The persona is
the persona.
The persona is our mask. It's what people perceive who we are, but we're so much more than what people see when they first meet us. But everybody needs a persona. I mean, we have to have a persona in order to feel safe. It's like a buffer between us, our fragile ego, and the world. And so we have a persona, and people see us and they think, you're like this. That's how she is, right? But then they really get to know you, and they find out all these other parts of you. So it is our outer mask. And that persona is developed in our childhood because we want to be accepted by our peers, by our teachers, by our parents, by our families. We develop a persona, and we think that's who we are, but we are not. We are so much more than what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And our persona is all that we tolerate about ourselves. Those are the things that we tolerate about ourselves. And our shadow is everything that is absolutely intolerable.
Mm-hmm.
Intolerable to the degree that we don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let that sink in. We don't know our shadow. When people say to me, oh, I know my shadow, I just kind of smile like, yeah, right.
It's gonna take a while. It's a long, hard, difficult. It's gonna be very dirty. It's gonna be very you get to know yourself as you grow older, and when you come across people who I think, and this is my side that I get really annoyed of know-it-alls, where they're like, oh, I understand this, I got it. I'm like, no, you don't. And so when I come across, I'm not in a lot of youngin groups. Sometimes I get really annoyed easily. That's just me. But when I come across people like you who actually study young, it's a breath of air. It's like I love being in your group as well, because I learned so much in comparison to the popular youngin groups. And
well, you know why you do? Because I break it down to how do we experience this in our everyday life.
Right.
Because you can hear people that talk about theory, and all they do is talk about theory. You don't hear them talk about how they're actually experiencing this. They're not sharing from their vulnerability of how it actually happened. Mm-hmm. How this kind of thing happened. I'm going to tell you all one story because it's so cool. And I was working as a graphic designer, and I had a business of my own. And a really, really good friend of mine that I'd started working with when we were in our 20s, he moved to Florida. And when he moved to Florida, we all became Apple. We all started using an Apple computer, but they didn't have, where he was still using a drafting table and paste up boards and whatever. So when he came back to Houston, he was like at a loss because nobody would hire him without any graphic design ability on a computer. And I told him, I said, I have 3 computers, and Trish and I were working together at the time. And we had a lot of work from Exxon Chemical and several other big companies. And so we told him he could work with us because he was a super good illustrator. And I said, I have an extra computer, and I have books on training. You can train yourself how to use the computer, and I'm here if you have a question. And we'll let you work with us. Well, he started working with us, and I would give him work. And sometimes he would do it wrong, and I would just have to fix it for him. And this went on for a year. But after about a year, I couldn't stand him anymore because I would tell him what to do. I would explain to him how to do it, and he would forget. And then he would do it wrong, and then I'd have to be in a hurry, and I'd have to fix it. And I was getting more and more and more irritated because I was trying to be my Libra self and be nice and patient and Ryan, like, here, I'm explaining to you how to do it. Here's how you do it. Please write it down. And one day he did something wrong, and I'd had it. And he walked in, and I said, I don't want to work with you anymore. Just like that.
I like that.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
He was shocked. And because I have been so nice.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what happened? And I said, you do so many things wrong, and I have to fix them for you. And I'm just so tired of it. And, it's like you're all chaotic, and you're, anyway, I put him down, and I said, we just can't work together, Richard. I mean, I'm sorry. And he left, and I felt really bad, but I was tired of it.
Right.
Well, the next day, one of my Macs went down, and I called my teacher, or not my teacher, but my computer expert helper, Patrick. And I called him, and I said, Patrick, my CI is down, and this and this and this. And he said, okay, Rebecca, I'm going to tell you, but this time, would you please write it down? This happened the very next day. I had goosebumps all over my arms. I had been projecting all of my chaotic, confused, not paying attention. I had been projecting all of that onto Richard. And the more I projected onto him, the more he was doing it. And my body, I immediately felt the forgiveness in my body, and I felt like, wow, the forgiveness was immediate. It was immediate. All that negative energy, all of that, I can't stand him, all that repulsiveness was gone. Gone. I called him and I said, would you please come over? I think we need to talk about this and solve it in a different way. And he came over, and I told him, I've been projecting because I had already started learning about the shadow. So if you start learning about the shadow, get ready, because the unconscious is going to give you situations. The unconscious will give you situations where you will start to integrate your shadow. And you will, if you're sincere, and that's why the alchemist said, you have to be very sincere when you undertake this work, going into the prima materia, because it is a sacred task to become our whole self. And he came and we solved it. But I'll never forget these experiences because they change you.
Right.
And that's what's lacking in the Jungian groups, to me.
You think so?
There's nobody talking about how they live it. There's nobody talking about how do you integrate this? How do you make this part of your everyday life? I mean, I'm not saying nobody, because of course there's a few people that are doing that and that do have discussions. I like the discussions. When people get in there, they start having discussions. But yes, I'm dedicated to bringing this information out so that people can have better relationships with everyone, but with themselves, especially with themselves.
And just like you said, doing shadow work requires us to be ruthlessly honest with ourselves, and that's what you wrote on your website, and it's true. I mean, a lot of these I'm not saying all of them, just like you said. I think there's some, but majority of the people in the Jungian group, in my personal opinion, they're so they think Jungian terms, like when they read Carl Jung, it's towards other people. Does that make sense? Like a lot of these self-help books that you come across in Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that, everybody is the problem, but not you. Whereas with you, what you teach us is you're the problem, and you need to fix yourself before you deal with the relationship outside. And I agree with that. I hate to admit that. I really do. I was like, wait a minute, I'm wrong. How dare you? But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? She's right. So, she's right. And that's allowing myself to realize that I'm just like everybody else. I'm in the collective, and I have to operate within the collective. And the only way to be 100% boon is to work within myself and try to be a better person, not only to society and my family, my husband, my baby, but to myself as well. It will make life more smooth for me.
You depotentiate a lot of the complexes that you have when you're willing to do this inner work. And the unconscious will take the same attitude towards you that you take towards it. And I'm using the word unconscious as synonymous with self and soul. Because that is the guiding principle inside of all of us that knows who we actually are and who we are becoming. We are becoming who we are. We don't know all of ourselves. That's why they said at the Temple of Delphi, know thyself and nothing in excess.
Right.
Two very wise statements that can help us now, Yep. And the fact that we are willing to do the work, the unconscious will help you. Your unconscious will start helping you if you pay attention to your dreams and the synchronicities and the people that repeat in your life. And instead of saying, I'm a victim here, instead of saying it like that or seeing, they did that to me, instead going inside and saying, what does that mean?
I definitely agree. I strongly agree. If I could applaud, I can't. By the way, I told Rebecca in the beginning I can't because my armrest is messed up, so I'm holding my microphone. But right there.
Feel how that softens your entire energy field.
It does.
What does it mean? What does the universe want from me from this experience? Even if it's painful and it hurts and you cry and you feel your feelings. I'm not saying deny your feelings. Feel your feelings. Write in a journal. This hurt me. Okay, what does it mean? What does the universe want from me from this? And then let the universe tell you, because if you ask, it'll come. You might see a billboard. You can be driving down the street on the way to a client and there's a truck in front of you and it's a white truck and you're going into a hospital, a place of healing, and the truck says on the back of the truck, it's time to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
That happened to me. These things happen to you when you're doing this work and you feel connected to the cosmos. That's
Mm-hmm.
when we're connected to the cosmos. And that's why when they ask you, do you believe in astrology? Do you believe we're connected to the cosmos? Yes, because astrology is just an ancient psychology that erupted in every civilization before we had computers and internet. It was in China. It was in Egypt. It was in Babylon. It started in Babylonia, and the Chaldeans were the first that had any of that in their history. So people on all different parts of the globe. Why? And that's why Jung says we're connected by the collective unconscious, by these archetypes. And all the symbols are, every planet is an archetype. And
Right.
an archetype is just a simple term that means that it is the same in everyone. Like we all have a Mars. We all have a need to take action, right? We all have a male side. We all have a Venus, a part of us that receives and that wants to be affectionate and give love. That's different from our moon. Our moon is our mothering instinct. That's different from the Venus, the Hetara, the sexy Aphrodite part of us.
Mm-hmm.
When you're being your Venus, you're not being your moon. Your moon is the mother. It's the big tit,
Yeah. Exactly.
And when we're being our Saturn, I do a consultation just on Saturn where we feel inadequate. Everybody feels inadequate. We all have a place in our life where we feel where we're not good enough, that we have to work harder at. And that becomes our gold later. It's GOLD, our gold. And that is the part of us that really loves us. When we can love our Saturn and all the different parts of us, we start to really love others.
Right.
Because you can't love others until you really love yourself.
Exactly. And that's the issue that I have with self-help books. It's everybody, I'm sorry to cuss, everybody's the fucking problem, but not myself. And that's pretty much what in, like you said, the American society, it's just.
Yeah. And a lot of people are seeing everyone as narcissistic now. Everybody's a narcissistic psychopath. And I'm like, yeah, well, guess what? We are all. Everybody has.
Exactly.
There's a time in our ego development where we needed to be a narcissist when we were little. And just because we're older doesn't mean we have left that developmental stage. It's still there. Everything in the psyche is still there. So we can revert to a 2-year-old in the drop of a hat if somebody triggers a complex.
Right.
You can be calm and collected and just, and I've studied this for 30 years, okay? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden something can happen and I can be 13 again. So right. I know that even though you do the work and you keep doing the work, you start to depotentiate these things to where you hopefully can start to respond instead of react. But right. don't beat yourself up when you react. It just means that triggered a complex. Okay, what does it mean? Go to the pen and paper. I go to my journal. I have 2 boxes of journals.
Before we continue, Rebecca, are you really going to start a podcast pretty soon? I mean, that that will be a very interesting podcast, especially when it comes to like astrology.
Yes, I am with a friend of mine. She has came to my meetup groups. I was teaching meetup groups here, helping people own their shadow and looking at their 7th house. I've always brought astrology into it, even though people have said to me, why don't you just teach shadow and leave 7th house and astrology out of it? I said, why? It's the truth. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to leave something out that I know would actually benefit people just because some people think it isn't good. Mm-hmm.
You're right.
And so I do, but at any rate, she came to my meetup group in 2013 and she consistently comes and makes comments, and she's been very consistent. I've given her a few readings, consultations. And so I asked her if she wanted to do it with me because I'm a Libra. I don't want to do it by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like with Libras, I mean, like my sister, she's the same way. Every time I come across my Libra friends, when they start their own podcast, when they're by themselves, they don't like it. They admit it. I'm a Leo. I'm like, I could just talk by myself. But with Libras, what I noticed about you guys is that you guys like partnership.
We do.
You
And
know,
we like to bounce ideas off of other people because, the truth is when you talk, I learn something too.
Mm-hmm.
I do, because you're you and you're bringing your own thoughts and your own ideas. And so we both get to learn from each other. It's not just like you're the big teacher. No, I want to have a dialogue with people that just come and talk about how they're using shadow work in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to call it Imagine a World Where Everyone Owned Their Own Shadow.
Mm-hmm. Everybody will be more happier. And it's just like living your complete self, and then dealing with the persona, stuff like that. I think to going back to Carl Jung, I believe I watched a documentary on him about dreams. The one that you mentioned, the book, where he is like an autobiography about himself, and he talks about the persona. I don't know where this took place, but there is a festival. I believe is a European.
Yes.
Yeah. They wear masks.
Yes.
Yeah, they wear masks to like a persona. With me, I'm more like a clown. So it's like my face. That's what I do. I have a sense of humor, and that's my way of hiding everything else behind myself. It's like if you could just picture us standing, and there's like multiple us behind us as well. So the person in the front that you show to the world, that's your persona.
Yes, persona.
Yeah, and then so with me, I like to have a very happy face. I like to like conceal all the pain and depression right behind me, and so that's what I do. But the thing is that I'm being vulnerable. If that makes sense. I never used to be that.
You're being more vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm exposing myself. I'm taking my mask off slowly, and it of course it causes a lot of friendship loss and things like that. But I accept that. It's not that they're the problem. It's not like the people around me are not the issue. It's myself. And I think I talked to my friend Mary about this, and she said something along the line of, I lost a lot of people. It really hurt me. But at the same time with me, I'm the total opposite. It taught me something about myself. And so I take that experience now. I don't complain anymore like I used to. I don't say I'm the victim like I used to. I'm more like, well, I'm growing. And it's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's just that's human beings. That's what we do to get to know not only ourselves, but to grow. And we're all little plants. We're all getting watered by wisdom, every single day. And so we grow. And, with you, Rebecca, I really admired your communication. Does that make sense? It's like, I want to be like that too. Like, I can never express myself as clear and concise as I want to be. And let me tell you like a little bit story as well. So I was having an issue with communication, especially when you're podcasting. You have to be direct, and you have to be careful with your words sometimes because people use that against you. Uh-huh. And I just have issues with communication. I'm not really good at it. People say I am, but what I'm trying to say, I never get to the point. So I was driving on the freeway to go to work, and I saw a raven. Now, I keep seeing the raven over and over again. So I looked it up. I said, okay, I don't know what a raven means. I'm just going to look up the symbol. The raven means communication, speak from your heart. And then the night before that, I had a dream that a raven was so into my heart.
Wow.
If that makes sense. Awesome. Yeah. And so that's just like you said, you talk about like seeing trucks and stuff like that. Like it's a signal from the universe telling you something. And so now I'm thinking to myself, wow, that is fascinating to me. And so I keep seeing ravens everywhere. And it's just, I have a raven, a little raven bird on near my microphone. It's pretty much to speak from your heart. Like I don't, like issue with podcasting, I always try to like sound smart and stuff like that. But when you speak from your heart and truthfully and openly, podcasting is so fun. And so that's what I learned so far, and that experience, and a lot of synchronicity happening lately. So,
and the more the synchronicities happen, the more you feel a simpatico or a connection to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
You do. Speaking of ravens, that's a bird that's come to me as well. And I was on the way to California with my boyfriend, and we stopped at the Grand Canyon. It was freezing cold. There was nothing out. We were the only people standing there at the Grand Canyon looking at everything. And way, way far away, there was a huge bird. And I saw the bird and I went, look at that bird. And he came directly and came to our feet. And it was a raven.
Wow.
And I was on the way to Hawaii to start writing my book. So my boyfriend was driving me to California so that I could leave and go have my car shipped from San Francisco to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And I stayed in Hawaii 3 months and then I came back. But that's one of those experiences, you know? So the same thing, when you start to see it everywhere, those things are collective symbols. They're symbols mm-hmm. that are meaningful. And when they come to you, it's really cool. So I love that you have that story because I could relate to it as well. And like I said, you and I are a lot alike. we are a lot alike. I mean, when I saw it on paper, I was like, wow.
It's like, hey, I met my younger twin. And that's pretty much what I feel with you, the connection as well. And so with me, it's like a spiritual connection as well. And to finally have somebody that understands me, it's very rare. I think it was like you and my sister is probably the only one that like, oh, I get it. You know, Boone's just being Boone. And so the amazing thing is that I have been seeing a lot of blue jays as well. So I see a lot of foxes. I see a lot of dogs. I see a lot of numbers as well. So I see a lot of 777, a lot of 111. So it's like repeating numbers over and over again. And so I just ignore it because I'm like, okay, I'm crazy. But now that I'm starting to pay attention to it, my life has gotten a lot better because I'm starting to listening to the universe symbols and messages to me for me to kind of understand within myself as well. And the raven is just like, it's just like a dream that I keep constantly having dreams about raven. And it's,
well, the unconscious is giving you a message.
Mm-hmm. It's telling
the unconscious is giving you a message. And, you know, Leo is ruled by the heart is Leo. Mm-hmm. That part of the physical body is the Leo part.
Right.
It's the open heart.
Mm-hmm. And to have that and to be able to like express myself more and more and to get it right. I know that I'm not perfect when it comes to talking.
You want to hear who's speaking when you say that? It's your Mercury.
Is that my Mercury?
Your Mercury's in Virgo.
So
Mercury in Virgo is like, oh my God, I could have said it different. I should have said it like this. And it's a constant denigration. And it's something you've been doing for many lifetimes mm-hmm. because your South Node is conjunct in Virgo as well. And so that tells me that your North Node, which is Pisces, is to let go, mm-hmm. to let go and to let the universe take over and to recognize that you're not in charge, mm-hmm. that you're not in charge, that you're, you know, that compulsion to be perfect is holding you back from your true self. And it's important that you don't completely get rid of it. You don't ever get rid of anything. You use that capacity for analysis, that really good capacity to see details and to recognize all the different parts that are connected, and then to let go. To mm-hmm. let go, let the universe take over. You surrender to a flow. The more and more you surrender to a flow, the less that Mercury in Virgo is going to hang you up and tell you you're not good enough.
Right.
I also teach people to make themselves a self-hypnosis tape.
Oh, wow.
Make a self-hypnosis tape of positive affirmations about yourself in the present, like the things that you want to have happen, the things that you want to see in your consciousness. You make like a script of yourself, and then you play it at night before you go to bed on your earphones and just play it, you know, and after 30 days, you'll start talking to yourself like that. You'll mm-hmm. start talking to yourself in those ways. And that's another thing along the way that I taught myself to do. Right.
And you guys have to remember, man, it's like she's been doing this for years, decades. So she knows what she's talking about. So, to read your article, our shadow dance partner, the article that you wrote. I love the fact that you wrote unconscious two centers of consciousness. And then so you have like a subheading called the undeveloped potential. I love that. I just had to. I thought about it the other day. I'm like, what's my potential? I'm not allowing myself to be myself. So you wrote that some of our shadow self is what the alchemists called our gold, because these are parts of us we badly need. When added to our personality, they would round us where we might be lopsided or have blind spots. An example of that would be a lazy people as something we abhor. We all have a tendency to see opposites as negative, something we would not want to be anything like. Workaholics commonly will find people to live out their much needed but so-called lazy side. It was a repeating the universe is saying loud and clear to consciously develop some of the opposite of workaholics that we judge as lazy, relax, slow down, work less, take a break. Ask for what you want if you need help. Communicate. Give the other person a way to help you out and meet you halfway. Totally agree with that. That's in regard to relationship, but that can be as an individual as well. So like me, I get annoyed really easily. I can't stand like people who are like desks. I'm a very my desk is very organized. So every time like my husband, his desk is just ugh. I can't do it. And so I see this about myself. And so like you're total opposite. It's like the unity of opposites.
Yes.
Basically. Yeah.
And
so
and the more you kind of let go and not be quite so critical or picky about everything, the more organized he'll become.
Yeah.
Because this is working on the unconscious level between both people. Mm-hmm. It's really remarkable. And it's especially fun if you can talk about it to each other.
Yeah.
To talk about it consciously. I mean, we're moving into the Aquarian age, and that's about objectivity and freedom to be, and to look at all these different opposites and see the parts of us that, wow, we need that part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We do. And I need that part for sure to balance everything. So we're going to wrap it up. And so, Rebeca, the last thing, this is what I always ask my first guest. I'm pretty sure you're going to make it like a more appearance. What wisdom that you want to share that you have learned throughout your existence? What have you learned?
I would say that the most important thing I've learned, and I had to come at it, the universe had to kick me in the ass over and over and over for me to get this. And that is to be willing to meet people halfway. And if they're not willing to meet you the other half of the way, turn around and walk away as if your life depended on it, because it does. Mm-hmm. If you try and try and try and try and try to beat your head up against the wall because you want something, it's not for you. You have to turn around and walk away and know that there's something more, there's something better, there's something else happening that you don't know about. There's a reason. And so because I had kind of an obsessive character, I would fall in love with people and then they were it. I mean, right. I did that to myself for years, to where I wouldn't even look at other people because it had to be that person and that's all. Well, I know a lot of people are like that. And then you cut yourself off. You cut yourself off from actually being in relationship with other people. So give yourself a chance to really accept that the universe has your back, that it really is benevolent, and that it wants for you wholeness. And if that's not happening, there's another door. There's going to be something else that's going to open up for you. Mm-hmm. So it's trusting the universe. Right.
Take it from me, guys. I can't let it go. I want to control and, let it go.
Well, it's hard. I mean, look how many years it's taken me to get to this place. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I'm getting it before I leave. I saw people like in my parents' situation in their late 90s and stuff, and they were still stuck. Mm-hmm. They were still stuck. And I'm like, I'm glad that this stuff is getting clear. The more I'm willing to do this inner work, the more I'm willing to be open to letting the universe take over, the happier I'm getting. I can honestly say I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life.
That's wonderful to hear. And that's the goal that everybody should strive for. And look, we're not saying you're going to get this overnight. Just like you said, it's going to be It's going to be being ruthlessly honest with yourself.
And trust me, when I was younger, I made a lot of money. I had really big clients, and I would make a ton of money. I worked with Exxon for 13 years as a graphic designer, and I would go to the shopping malls and close them down on Saturday night and spend $500 because I was so depressed. But the clothes made me feel like, and the shopping and buying things made me feel happy. And so that was like my persona, my mask was look how successful I am, blah, 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 blah. But inside I was dying. It wasn't until I started doing all this work on myself that all that stuff didn't matter anymore. That all, yes, you need to have I have a house, I have a 4-bedroom house, I have a hot tub, I drive a Lexus, I have really nice things, but it's not about when I was striving for all of that. If I had, over the years, if I had recognized that those things that I thought were so important were all outer. They were all outer things. But the inner world is where we really have peace. The inner world and developing a relationship with our inner world is what will really help us be happy. And maybe that's a second half of life thing, but I think more people that are young like you all are coming into that awareness now. Right? I mean, I think that more younger people are starting to come into that awareness that it's inner things that are more important than outer things. Although outer things, of course, when people say, well, I don't ever want to have whatever, baloney, you need everything it's all about balance.
Right.
It all comes back to balance. But yes, if the one important thing would be to meet people halfway, meet them halfway. And the other thing would be to know the universe has your back.
So I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Rebecca. So where can we find your information? I'm going to link it, but are you going to have your podcast is it up and running already?
We're going to start in January.
In January?
Yeah.
New
year. Start in January, and we're going to invite anybody to come on and just talk to us about their life and their shadow. And right now, the entire month of December, my webinar, again, is just $50 for the 6 modules, and my consultations are $175. I have that until tomorrow. The 24th is when I cut that off. And then after that, they're $250 each. But you get an hour. You also get the Psychological Horoscope Analysis Report by Liz Green, and she is the world's most famous astrologer. I sell those on my website, so if you can't afford anything at all, at least get that. Her report is how I got into my shadow in the first place. I didn't even know what that was. So those are the 3 things I offer people. And there's lots of free videos on my YouTube channel, and there's lots of articles, and I will have the podcast so you can come in and talk about your shadow.
You do a lot of live shows. She likes doing all that stuff, doing live shows and stuff, which is really interesting. I watch it. I'm not a camera person, even though I'm a Leo.
I didn't like it.
You don't like live?
I didn't like being alone talking to a computer. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I personally can do it, but with me, I don't like being on camera because I have to get ready and stuff like that. Like right now, I'm in my PJs. So I like doing. I'm
in my jogging pants and I'm all dirty, and I'm going to go clean the hot tub out, and then I'm going to dye my hair.
And this is our Leo side coming out. We're like, we have to look fabulous today. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Rebecca, this is a compliment. You are like the female version of Terrence McKenna. So Terrence McKenna is just one of my person that I look up to. And it just, I don't know why. You just remind me of Terrence McKenna. So you're always welcome to come back. You're officially in my little bubble. And yes, I'm going to link her information down below. So as always, guys, stay far out. Bye.